The September window of games is over. Thank God. Not what we had expected after the disappointment of the Copa America. We were gifted more disappointment. But there was a silver lining. At long last, we heard from Mauricio Pochettino and confirmation from the powers that be at U.S. Soccer that he is signed, sealed, and delivered. He is excited about this job, and he is going to be in charge in the next window of games. Officially, oh, my notes got all wet here. Who got all this wet? October the 12th when they take on Panama in Austin, Texas. So great news on that front, and we are going to talk more about Pochettino in our next video. We have videos pumping out here on the Soccer OG. We have more good news to share with you. Check out the Soccer OG podcast where all podcasts are available. My guest on the next pod is going to be Alexi Lalas. We will talk about Pochettino. We'll talk about the U.S. men's national team and where we are headed. And we'll talk about him. He's had an incredible year. Really building his State of the Union podcast. And we will indulge that. So I think check that out. The Soccer OG podcast. Wherever you find your podcast. Like and subscribe us here. And, subscribe. Hit the subscribe. Hit the like. You know what to do. I mean, you've gone through this drill many times. We're going to have another show here tomorrow talking all things Pochettino, how it happened, what are the implications, and what we expect Pochettino to do in his first couple months in charge with the United States. An incredible challenge. So we will have all of that. But we are going to focus here on the USA-New Zealand game, which did not offer a lot of positives with regards to this program. Even with the news of Pochettino, you were hoping to see a player base lifted up, hoping to make it an initial impression, because now you know, and knowing Pochettino, he is watching tape after tape after tape. He can now make phone calls. He can now go to games. I hope he spends some time in the United States. I think it's important. I was hoping he would be here because I don't want to get ahead of myself, but if this happened a few days earlier and he walks out into that stadium in Cincinnati and goes, yeah, I'm here, and there's going to be a proper introduction for him here shortly, so we'll get all of that. But this was just an inspiring moment. And for people like me who are inside the beltway of U.S. soccer, American soccer, it's a pump the fist moment, but we didn't get that. Soon we'll forget about it, and we'll forget about these games. These games do not matter, so don't have a knee-jerk reaction to it all. So many key players missing. If you look around the world where there are games that did matter, obviously World Cup qualifying in South America, African Cup of Nations qualifying in Africa, Nations League games in Europe, which meant something, but you could sense the fatigue in that with all of these games. So this was whatever. We want to see a better performance, obviously. We want to see some things that we can take away. There was a few things we could take away out of the Canada game, and I think there's a couple things here that we could take away from this matchup as well. We'll try to spin it positively as we can, but we'll keep it short and sweet so we can get ready for the Pochettino show coming up. This was the starting 11, and I think of note when you look at what we had here, there were only 4 players who were on the field who started the game against Uruguay in the final Copa America game that were on this squad, on this 11 here. You talk about the 8 players that were not called in or were injured. That's all. This is it's probably a C team, right? It's probably a C team, but maybe it's the A team. Because we're going to know what Pochettino comes in, and we'll give you more idea of what he is seeing. But we know everyone's on check. Everyone is on check, and you could see it etched on the face of Christian Pulisic, who just was different. When they asked him about Pochettino, you could sense the disappointment he had after the Canada game. He came off the bench in this game. You could sense the disappointment with the result. You could just sense the disappointment, period. He seems like a guy who is uninspired, who is disappointed, who is, very reflective about what's happening. And he is our most important player. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So his discontent certainly resonates. And in a new era of American soccer where we need leaders, we need him. I mean, he is our best candidate. He has tenure, and he is our most talented player. But this was the starting 11. Very quickly, Matt Turner in goal after Patrick Schulte did okay against Canada. It was a 4-4-2, which was surprising. I don't know what that means for Pochettino, but I'm sure there's some conversations between Pochettino and Mike Ivaras and U.S. Soccer, even though Pochettino is going to bring in his home crew. Christopher Lund starts both games, as does Chris Richards. Mark McKenzie comes in, and Marlon Fossey also coming in at right back. Haji Wright, Yunus Musa, Aiden Morris, Brendan Aronson were the midfielders, and Balogun and Pepe were the players up top. So Chris Richards was the captain. I saw a nice little story. First player from Alabama ever to captain the U.S. team. And I think that's important. I think that's important to show the width and breadth of what we're doing, the development of American soccer. The guys aren't just coming from California or Texas or New Jersey. They're coming from Alabama. They're coming from Alaska. They're coming from, where some interesting, Georgia, Maine. I don't know if they are, but I know Georgia and Alaska, they're perhaps coming. But that's a good sign. So happy for Chris Richards to have that moment. So the energy, the intensity was certainly lacking. But there was some, I want to get into some of the positives I saw, and then we can kind of pick off of that. Just kind of going through the game. Ricardo Pepi was all over this. I want to say something about Ricardo Pepi. I thought he wasn't good against Canada. He was good in this game. He just couldn't catch a break, right? Couldn't get it. He had a goal disallowed in the 21st minute that should have been a goal, and that obviously changes things for a game that ended up 1-1. And that's a big story for the U.S. that we take away from this, right? Because the story under Greg Berhalter was that we could beat the teams we were supposed to, but we couldn't beat the better teams in the world. But now we're not beating the teams we're supposed to. We're supposed to beat Canada at home. We're supposed to beat New Zealand at home. In fact, the record for the United States in their last 3 months is 1-4-2, and they played Uruguay. Other than that, they played teams they are supposed to beat. So that is something that I think is pretty alarming coming out of what we saw here in both Kansas City as well as Cincinnati. Ricardo Pepi, I felt bad. He was involved in a lot of positive things, but he was an intense. I think there was a couple guys that played with a lot of intensity. Pepi was one. I thought Brendan Aronson played with that intensity. Yunus Musa had an intensity, but it was misfired. He was turning the ball over. This was a bad day for Yunus Musa. I still think he's going to be a big part of the U.S. men's national team, but this was a bad day. Can't turn the ball over, especially when the guy you played alongside in Aiden Morris was a Cadillac. Take all my money, Aiden Morris. Aiden Morris is the guy. I have him right on the cusp of being our number start. I know I don't want to be prisoner of the moment. It's still going to be Tyler Adams. But I think Aiden Morris has some really good tape to show Mauricio Pochettino. He's ahead of Johnny Cardoso, and he's ahead of Tanner Tessman, who wasn't here. That's what I think Aiden Morris did. So calm and collected in 2 games. Looked like he has been with the national team for years, didn't he? Was I alone in that? He looked like he belonged. That is what we want to see. We just need to see it from more players. Aiden Morris got that eye of the tiger that I told you about in previous shows. So Aiden Morris did well. Back to the intensity. Aiden Morris wasn't the most intense person there. He was just, I guess, not to get into semantics, but certainly the most uncompromising. He wasn't taking any crap from anyone. And when he made a mistake, he fixed it. I loved it. Perfect stuff from him. But the intense players were Pepi, for me, Brendan Aronson, Musa, misdirected intensity in some cases. And how about Marlon Fossey? Or Cucureya. Cucureya. Se come la paella. That's the worst song ever, so I don't want to go any further with that. Just because of the hair, I know. He plays on the right side, not the left side. But he looked really good. As a depth piece for the fullbacks, I'll take Fossey, I'll take Aronson, and I'll take Fossey, and I'll take Morris. To a lesser degree, because he made a big foul up that led to the New Zealand game, was Mark McKenzie, who looked comfortable he had some turnovers too. No one was pretty. But we're looking for passing center backs, and McKenzie has that about him. I want to see more. I'll put it this. Mark McKenzie didn't blow us out of the water, but I want to see more. Good first half, second half was so-so because of the mistake. So in the positive department, Aiden Mars, Fossey, Mark McKenzie. Off the bench, we have a super sub in Christian Pulisic. Should we? He scores another goal in Cincinnati. It was actually his first goal in some time. So Christian Pulisic scoring was nice. The U.S. should have won this game. They should have had 3 goals. Flo Balogun again had nice moments, but we have to see him score a goal. He was so close so many times. He was involved in a really nice chance at the hour mark. There was a great setup he had for Aronson in the 64th minute. So I think Balogun, my fear on Balogun is that he plays with Monaco and he's in a situation where he's not scoring goals and he becomes another U.S. player that's not playing for his club, which we'll talk more about in the next video. Could be a huge dilemma because I don't think Mauricio Pochettino wants... He might accept 1 player or 2 player that's not playing on their club because they're that talented, but he's not going to accept 5 or 6. That is a non-starter. He wants guys that are playing and playing regularly and playing important minutes for their clubs, regardless of where those clubs are. That's why I bring up a guy like Fossey, who's playing in Belgium. It's not a top league. Aiden Mars is playing in the EFL Championship. That's not a top league. So, as I said before, let's get away from, hey, this guy's playing at Milan, this guy's playing at Betis, this guy is playing in the Premier League. It doesn't matter. It's got to be a combination of playing at a good club, but also playing, period. Haji Wright, again, a bit rudderless, but you don't throw him out the baby with the bathwater, so I was okay with him. And look, the reality is they should be beating a team like New Zealand 3-4-1, just like Mexico did. Mexico had better results. Canada had better results. Canada, Mexico, scoreless tie. The U.S. Of the big 3, I guess you could say, in CONCACAF were a distant third. There is no doubt about it. But we pushed this aside. We're disappointed about it, but we don't dwell on it too much because we're going to have a bumper of a setup in October with those games against Panama and Mexico. Mauricio Pochettino is going to be on the sideline. And the exciting part is starting right now and heading up to a month from now. Pochettino, because he is the professional. And we'll talk about, he knows what about these expectations. And he is coached at the biggest destinations where the pressure is immense. He knows the work you have to put in. I mean, I don't think Greg Berhalter was shortchanging it, and Mikey Varas isn't shortchanging it, but Pochettino puts the work in, has all the connections in the world, and has seen it all. So we're very blessed. We're excited about that. We're not excited about how these games went. We got to play a lot of new players. That's good. And we can be disappointed. And look, my excitement for the 2026 World Cup is as low as it's been since they announced us having the World Cup. It really is. It's probably as low since 2017. That's dead serious. These results, the play on the field, the angst and so forth about the players, it's all bad. And that is what we have to accept right now. But the good news, it'll get better. And hopefully it gets better in a month. The Soccer OG podcast. We have a new one with Alexi Lalas. Check it out. Available where you get your podcast. Like and subscribe us here. Another video all about Mauricio Pochettino coming in next. Thanks for joining us. I'm Max. We'll see you soon.